right now. Pittsburgh's best sports show is about to begin. Call us or tweet us. We've got things to talk about on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome inside the Fan Cave. This is the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. Bob Pompeani with you until 11 o'clock tonight. Be sure to join us at 11:35 over on KDKA. We have the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown and so much to get into. My panel will include Jason Mackey, Will Graves, and Jeff Hathorn. That's tonight after the late news on KDKA. In the meantime, it's just you and me here, so call at 412-575-2600 or on Twitter or X, however you prefer to call it. It's at KD Pomp. We have some interesting ones already. Jill Ballmer tweets me and says, once again today, I'm so thankful that I don't bet money on football. You're right, Joe. If you do that, the NFL has a wild way of keeping things pretty equal until the end. There are comebacks. We saw 4 double-digit second-half comebacks today. Much to the surprise of many people, the Eagles lost at home, and Denver's for real. Bo Nix and company, they have a good team and a very good defense out there as well. As far as the Steelers are concerned, well, they're sitting on top in what looks like a very nice position, mostly because of what those other teams are going through. Not just losses, but losses of personnel, big-time losses. Baltimore had a lot of guys that were certainly out today, including Lamar Jackson, 5 members of their defense, and it showed as the Houston Texans beat them pretty handily at 44-10. That's a team that's 1-4 now, and they are licking their wounds. I don't know if they can come back from a 1-4 deficit. We'll see. Things are sitting pretty for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They now have 2 games coming up. One of them against Cleveland next Sunday at Acrisure Stadium, and then after that, on a short week, going to Cincinnati, Ohio, to take on the Bengals, who are just as bad right now. They have no defense. We knew that coming in. Gave up a lot of points today to Detroit. And by the way, Detroit now, first 5 games of the year, has scored a combined 174 points. That's the most in their history. So they're hot right now in Detroit, and Cincinnati is really struggling as well. I want to talk to you about all that and more, including the Penguins now. The Penguins are going to open up on Tuesday night in New York against the Rangers. Mike Sullivan, who seemed not to be interested in playing younger guys, well, he's going to get a dose of what the Penguins are going to throw at him, which is a younger lineup to some degree. They still have their veterans there, but 2 teenagers have cracked the roster. We'll talk about that. And if you're a Penn State football fan, this is not your weekend. They dropped from 7 completely out of the top 25 in the Associated Press poll. So things are struggling in Penn State. Can they rebound? Can they start? To me, they got to win out all the way, and that includes back-to-back wins potentially over Ohio State and Indiana. Lots to get into at 412-575-2600. Call us there. Your opinions. Do it right now on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. We're on the air 7 nights a week right here on KDKA+. All right, welcome back. This is our Xfinity tweet of the night by our friend Chris Muller up at the Fan. UCLA interim head coach Tim Skipper now is tied with James Franklin with 1 career top 10 win against a Big Ten opponent. I have to go back. I thought in 2016 or 17 he had one also against Wisconsin, which I thought was ranked at the time. I'm not sure. But the bottom line is that tweet indicates that things are not going well for James Franklin. UCLA had not only the interim head coach, they had an interim defensive and offensive coordinators, and yet somehow they beat Penn State, and they ran it right down their throats. 52 attempts for 280 yards. And Penn State, which was favored by almost 4 touchdowns in this game, many people thought they'd rebound from Oregon loss, and normally Franklin beats these kinds of teams. He did not yesterday, and now this team is really reeling. You wonder what the response is going to be moving forward. I noticed on social media a lot of people talk about firing James Franklin. That will not happen. It's too expensive, $56 million buyout, unless there's some sort of amicable resolution here that he would agree to. But if that happens, it won't happen until after the season is over. I don't think it will happen at all, to be quite frank with you. At 412-575-2600, I want to talk about that. Pitt's new quarterback, who is an outstanding 18-year-old freshman, got a start yesterday, even though Pat Narduzzi said all week it was going to be Eli Holstein. So we'll find out what people have to say about that, but Pitt needed a win, and they got one in a big way. And as far as the Penguins, as I said, they are going to be starting on Tuesday night in Madison Square Garden against Mike Sullivan and the Rangers. And the Penguins are trapped in that, trying to compete now and get to the playoffs with older group that they have, but also infuse some young guys. And they have 2 teenagers. And Ben Kindle, an 18-year-old, #1 pick this year, 11th overall. He made at least this roster. How far he plays, we'll find out. And then Harrison Brunick, he's a guy who's 19. He was last year's 2nd-round pick. So we're going to find out what the Penguins have. Goaltending issues are going to carry them one way or the other. Artur Shilovs is going to be the backup for Tristan Jarry, at least to start this season. Miroshov has been sent down to Wilkes-Barre Scranton. Ryan Graves also down there as well. I believe he cleared waivers after he was waived, and he has been a massive disappointment despite the contract he signed. All right, let's go to the phone lines, beginning with Brad in the South Side. Hello, Brad. How are you tonight?
Hey, Bob. What's going on, man?
Not much. You tell me.
I think, I'm a diehard fan and all, but I think we got to pump the brakes a little bit. You know what I mean? And the reason why I say that is we got a brutal rest of the season, especially the second half of the season.
You're right.
I don't know by then how the AFC is going to look. You know what I mean? And
Brad, what happened to you? Okay, we lost you there, but yeah, I agree with that. And again, the lessons learned from last year, the Steelers at one point were 10-3, seemingly cruising to a playoff spot, which they eventually got, but they lost 5 in a row down the stretch. And, this schedule is going to get more difficult for sure. And listen, I would never put past a game against Cleveland or Cincinnati, especially Thursday nights where the Steelers have struggled at times. Cincinnati, that would be on a short week. We'll see what they can do. But Jake Browning has just not performed anywhere near what I think they thought he could. You wonder if they'll make a trade. You wonder if a team like that would go after a Jameis Winston, a Russell Wilson, even a Kirk Cousins if necessary, just to try to salvage something out of the season now that they know that Joe Burrow is going to be gone pretty much until late December, so essentially for the rest of the season. So even though it looks interesting on paper for the next 2 weeks for the Steelers, they can't go into that thinking they have those games won. I'm sure Penn State thought that yesterday as they went to UCLA, and all of a sudden they got hit in the face pretty hard. So Mike Tomlin and company will make sure that doesn't happen. At least I hope they do, because that Cleveland team can still play defense. They were in a position to win today against Minnesota, up 17-14, and Minnesota had to drive 80 yards, and they did. So their defense did not come up with big plays when they needed it the most. But having said that, they were good for a large majority of that game against the Minnesota offense that is a pretty capable offense, even with Carson Wentz as their quarterback. All right, 412-575-2600 is the number to call. Also talking about Pitt, and man, what a performance yesterday. This 18-year-old kid, Heinschel, is somebody who was on their roster and apparently had a very good training camp, but he didn't play, and the reasons are obvious, because Eli Holstein has an NIL deal. They're paying him in excess of $1 million to be the quarterback. He fell apart as last year went on. People thought he'd rebound this year, and then to start against some lesser competition, he looked pretty good. However, in that game against Louisville, he made some critical mistakes. In the red zone, that's been a big problem for Pitt coming into that game yesterday. They had made like 26 trips in there, only had 11 touchdowns, so they made a quarterback change, and Maso Heinschel got in there, and he made things happen. No interceptions. He threw the ball well. I think largely played a lot more in a mature rate than you would have thought for an 18-year-old kid making his first college start. Now, it's one thing to do it yesterday against a Boston College team that wasn't that good in front of not a sellout crowd, and then this coming week they got to go to Tallahassee, and they'll take on Florida State, which had their problems last night with Miami, but Florida State is still FSU on the road. It's going to be a packed house, a tough environment to play. We'll learn a lot more about Mason Heinschel coming up this coming weekend. 412-575-2600. We'll take a break, come back with more here as we continue. It's the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. We're live on KDKA+. I have a question for you. Do you think the Steelers regret trading George Pickens to Dallas for a third-round pick? Call and let me know what you think, because at the beginning of this season, I was one of those people, and I realized how turbulent a personality George Pickens is, but I also thought this is kind of a nice position to be in if you're a team, because he has 1 year left. It's kind of a prove-it year for him on big money contract. If he let his behavior become an issue once again, and he probably would cost himself millions of dollars, but if he knew 1 year left that I got to put up some numbers here and I got to just check that in the back seat and don't do what I've been doing, he could be very productive. You know about his talent, no question about that. But the Steelers didn't want to deal with any more of his problems, so they sent him to Dallas. Dallas was more than willing to take him, especially for a third-round pick. And today, George Pickens got his 5th touchdown pass of this season already. And you look at a 43-yarder. He was being watched today by Sauce Gardner, And the Jets are pathetic, by the way. I wonder how the Steelers somehow escaped there with a win the way they played. But they're 0-5 now. But Sauce Gardner and Pickens had a pretty good battle all day long, and Pickens got the best of him a couple of times. So 5 touchdown passes. Again, my position on it was tolerate him and challenge him and say, okay, you have 1 year left on a contract. You want to make money? It's time for you to concentrate on what you're doing and be a playmaker here and not a crybaby. So far, he's been perfect down there in Dallas. Most of the people down there think he's done a very good job of handling all of that. And again, without CeeDee Lamb, 5 touchdown passes. I always thought it would be interesting to see Metcalf and Pickens on the same team, opposite sides, if just for 1 year. And we'll see what happens there. It would have helped, I'm sure, both out. But that didn't happen. They made a change. And now they're looking for potentially someone to step up as Calvin Austin is injured, as you know. And we'll find out who's going to get more opportunities, more targets. It could be Pat Freiermuth, because he hasn't had many targets, especially in the last game in Minnesota, when they decided to put in Washington a large degree of run selections in their play design. So he could be a beneficiary, or Roman Wilson, who's only had a couple of targets all season long. And I thought coming out of training camp and the preseason that he would get more of that. So far, that has not happened. But we'll find out this coming Sunday. In the meantime, let's go to Jerry in Blairsville, who joins us right now. Hi, Jerry. How are you?
Hey, Bob. I was just curious. I mean, do you think it's an attitude thing with Pickens? Do you think that he was the reason that he wasn't going to be successful here was because of the attitude, or do you think it's just the better chemistry that he has with Dak Prescott?
That's a good question, but I think it's, he just was more of a problem than he was anything else up here. Especially, you might remember the Christmas Day game against Kansas City when he was here, and he didn't show up until, very late. And he makes everyone look bad when he does that. So I think they just got tired of what happened there, and there's probably a lot more behind the scenes that I'm not even aware of. But, they dealt with him for 2 years, 3 years. This is 1 year left on his deal. And again, it's up to him, nobody else, to put up the kind of numbers that will result in a future contract. If he doesn't do it, he's going to lose out. So obviously, you have to make a choice. I'm not going to be immature. I think his maturity level here was not good. They knew that coming out of college when they drafted him, but still drafted him because he's so talented. So now, even without CeeDee Lamb down there in Dallas, he certainly has a role on that team. And when Lamb gets back, they seem to be playing a lot better right now. We'll see how that goes, but he's on track to get a pretty good deal in free agency, I would think. John joins us right now on Shady Side. Hello, John. How are you?
Hi. I want to talk about George Pickens.
Okay.
I knew the Steelers were going to make a mistake trading him, and it's proving right. He has 5 touchdowns, only 1 drop. He's been tearing it up, deep ball after deep ball. And all we have is DK Metcalf. And I also think that the Steelers should have made an effort to sign Nick Chubb instead of putting all their eggs in their basket with who they had. I mean, Gainwell is good, but we need a more power back too.
Yeah, I think first of all, Chubb had so many injury issues. I think it was risky at times to think about what he could do, and he's doing well, obviously, right now. But Gainwell has been better than I thought he would be, especially at the cost. It wasn't all that much money. It was like $1.5 million on a 1-year deal. And he's been very good for them, better than I thought he could be. But you're right, with injuries, although I do expect Jaylen Warren to be back this coming week, so they should have a full complement of guys. And they drafted Caleb Johnson to be that guy. But as far as Pickens is concerned, yes, that was my gut feeling at the time. I knew what a pain in the neck he could be. I knew how immature he was. I've heard stories. But I also thought there was something on the line for him. And I would have challenged that. I would have said, you know what, there's a carrot at the end of the season for you, but you have to perform. No more of this BS. No more immature attitude. See what you can do. And he goes to Dallas. They were willing to give him that chance, and so far it's looking pretty good as the Steelers continue to look for more help in the wide receiver department. All right, want you to join us again tonight at 11:35 for the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. We'll go over a lot of the interesting topics out there in Pittsburgh sports, which include the Steelers, where they are, and can they solidify this 3-1 record and make it 5-1 until the schedule gets more difficult. Because after that, you have Green Bay. You have Indianapolis, too, a team that won again today. And you can say this after 5 games of this season, that Daniel Jones is in the conversation for MVP. I also think my pick was Baker Mayfield to be MVP of the league, and he certainly helped me out today with a tremendous performance out west against Seattle. How about those 2 quarterbacks, Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold? Both have been discarded many times. Darnold 5 times, Mayfield 4 times with different teams. You think the Cleveland Browns are regretting what they're doing out there? They had him, and they let him go. It seemed like they didn't want him. He got him to a playoff game, and they beat the Steelers in that playoff game, and then he's out. It took him a while to get this opportunity in Tampa, but one of the best bargains, I think, in sports right now at less than $110 million over 3 years. We're out of time. Good night. See you tomorrow.